All right, let's dive on in. Now, this is the time of the week here to where we shift in this class largely from doing hardware-based discussion and switch over now to software, to operating systems, application software, to configuration, things like that. Now, I didn't see, let's see here. Yeah, you guys didn't. Well, there's 8 and 9. There's 8. Okay, very good. I see you scores now. Excellent, excellent. And you guys again proving me right all along the lines here. Um, so now we got to talk about software. Now, on your in your Core One exam, Core One covers the hardware functionality, and that's the first 2.5 days of this class as far as the lecture, as well as the lesson quizzes that we go over in the class. Now we're going to shift gears, as I said, and get into your operating system environment. Now, this class is very Windows centric. So we will be concentrating more on the Windows operating system environment and applications that run in that environment. But we'll also touch on a couple of other operating environments as well, Linux and Mac OS specifically. Oh, pardon me. And we'll take a look at other operating systems, Android, for instance, and I'll sort of touch and give you some information about Unix operating environments as well. Now, all of those other than Windows is a Unix-based operating system environment. Even Linux is a derivative of the Unix operating system. Linux is the open source, completely free operating distributions. There are a good couple of dozen of those that are available. I run about 5 different Linux distributions myself. I'm not a strong Linux guy, but I can drive them pretty well. And I have purchased me the Linux for Dummies handbook here. I actually got the first version of it about 5 years ago. And now I'm into the third volume of it. And that's sort of my Linux Bible, if you will, my Linux guide. So we'll look at the characteristics of Linux. Even Mac OS is a Unix-based operating system, even though it's not open source. It's a proprietary version of it. And the Android operating system also, which is owned by Google, of course, is also a sort of a derivative of Unix, Linux-based operating system there. And it's free. It's open source operating system as well. Let's take a peek at Linux, or at Windows. This is a pretty good screenshot of a Windows 10 view. You guys saw that in your virtual lab that you went over earlier today as part of homework last night. This is called the GUI, our graphic user interface. It has changed over the years from what it was many moons ago in different versions of Windows. This and the new version Windows 11, they've sort of changed and rearranged some of the areas on the screen specifically, and more in the way that they look and feel rather than the functionality. Functionality has been the same for quite some time, of course. You have your taskbar down at the bottom of the screen along the. All right, what is going on there? Okay, hold on a sec. I need to fire up one of my tools here. Okay, and that is one of my tools that should have automatically started up here. I see it did not. So let's see here. Find this bad boy here. There we go. All right, now we should be a-okay here. Let's see if it's going to work for me there. There we go. The different areas and the items here. This is, of course, your search bar here. This is your Windows Start menu button right here. The search bar will allow you to search for different terms. And of course, if you start, for instance, typing in Notepad, it will pop up an item that will allow you to go ahead and click and start the Notepad. If you do a left click on your Windows Start menu, you get this Start menu here that provides the links to all of the available applications that are loaded on the system. Alphabetical list. And then you just, do a click on those things. It starts up. Same kind of thing as if you had the icons on the desktop over here. Double click on those. And of course, these guys down here on the taskbar are single click items for the most part. These guys here, you can decide when a particular application is loaded onto the system if you want a quick start icon in the taskbar or not. The other areas of the taskbar over here, you have your time clock, date and time clock area there. You've got your Windows networking function here where it shows your current network connections. There's your speaker for setting up your multimedia appliances. And then you can pretty much arrange that taskbar, any way you want it. You can decide to put whole lots of items down there that are quick start icons on the taskbar. Of course, in the main panel of your Windows system here, you've got, you have quite a bit of capability as far as arranging icons on your desktop here. The whole desktop is a sort of a virtual view, if you will, into how your computer system is configured, and you pretty much arrange it however you want to. You can do a right click on anywhere on the open area of the desktop and bring up some of your system configuration menus, for instance, a settings menu, your display menu, and you decide how to basically configure the system. Now, this is also a Windows interface, but this is the Windows 11 interface. You'll notice a couple of things about this here. It has sort of moved the whole taskbar functionality over into the center of the screen like this, rather than being left anchored here. You notice also the nice rounded corners to the windows themselves. That really is starting to take on, in my opinion, the look and feel of Mac OS and some of the Linux distributions I've seen. So they all sort of seem to be converging and starting to look and act and feel the same. Otherwise, you got the same areas that are located down here on this part of the taskbar. And by the same token, you can arrange as many of these items here on the menu as you wish. Of course, you can drag and drop those around, to whatever arrangement you want to have on the system there. And then in addition, you have these bunch of these different pop-up kind of menu items here, or application items here. This is the same thing as if you press the Windows Start menu and it shows you the available applications, or I can go to the all apps there and then it will give me that alphabetical listing that I looked at. I can have those arranged pretty much the same way as on the previous screen if I wish. Now I'm a big fan of still keeping my control panel, where I have all my menu items and my applications available for me. Some people prefer to drive the system more from the system menu, which is this is your settings menus. This is the new version of it. Here's the older version on the Windows 10 implementation. Same kind of thing. It lists all of your items here as category groups, and then you drill down to these and get to the control panel menus. My preference is to drive it from the control panel aspect, this guy right here. Okay. I can decide the sizing over here of my view by, my large icons. I can decide that with these guys. And being an old crusty dude and my eyesight's beginning to wane a bit, I like to bump these up where they're large and I can see them. And the thing I like so much about the control panel too is getting to any and every one of these, it's a single click operation. Whereas on these menus here, I have to drill down to the category and then drill down again to get to the individual applets like I have here. Single click, ready to rock. So that, again, it's just a personal preference. You set the workstation and the GUI up, whatever suits your methodology there. You set it up and it's very configurable there. Also, my individual user account functions. If I have administrative privileges on the device, I can not only go in and update my own user profile, but I can create other profiles and group profiles and assign access and permissions to this particular system. Another of the things that I can set up is basically a security limit. It's called user access control. And I know you've encountered that before. Say you go to install an application on a Windows environment and you're not the systems administrator. So you get this window that pops up and says, well, this application is wanting to make changes or updates to your system. Do you want to allow those? Yes or no? And by clicking less, it gives you temporary elevated access so that you can allow the application to do whatever change function it wants on your system. Doesn't make you the systems administrator, but it does give you that temporary elevation of your access. And it also force feeds a security item in your system log. Okay. So the app settings here, I mean, you can go up and set up, for your own account what the specifics of the account are. Do you want to require a password? If so, what is the passcode? And you basically manage the account setup functions for your account. And as I said, if you have administrative rights or log on as the administrator in the system, you can set up the access privacy settings for any and all users that are defined on the system, up to and including access and permissions for individual users to directories, folders, application programs, database engines, things like that. So you decide all of that in the settings there. Other things that I can set up, again, about the personalization of the interface, the GUI for the individual user. I can set up the background, I can set up the theme, I can set up the colors, I can set up things like sizing of fonts and icons. I can set up things such as, how long do I want the screen to be active for in any inaction before it goes into lock mode? And, do I require a password to take it out of lock mode? Those kind of things. I also can go into the desktop settings and identify things such as what is my time zone, and that automatically adjusts your time clock and other functions that applications look at. There are also additional settings that I can define for hearing impaired, vision impaired. There's a really cool screen reader function that you can get from Windows that's designed for vision impaired folks to help them navigate. It actually reads the content of the screen and will even assist them in locating where their mouse is. So really cool function there as far as allowing that interaction with those that may be sight or hearing impaired, for sure. My father-in-law, before he passed away, his vision had gotten so poor that I had set up he had two different computer systems, and he loved browsing the internet, and he was a big fan of Major League Baseball, NASCAR racing, and avionics. So he had a gazillion links on those three particular things. And my son-in-law swears to this day that Paps downloaded the entire internet because he'd find any kind of photos or videos or anything, well, he'd get him a local copy of it off the internet. But it got to where I really had to bump up the sizing of his fonts and his text. And I showed him also how to use the spyglass application, this magnifier glass thing here, so that he could zoom in on a particular area of the screen. So I miss him. He really enjoyed his computer systems in his later years. This is your file explorer here. This is your window into your system. It allows me to look at the configuration of my hard disk drive and all of the folders that I have, subfolders, all of the files that are associated with my user profile or the system as a whole. There are several different Windows oriented system files and directories and subdirectories. And then, of course, I can create my own user-based directories, or they call it folders and subfolders in Windows. But, I've seen that some of the language that I've seen, especially in some of the Windows documentation, is now beginning to assume, rather than folders and subfolders language, directories and subdirectories, which is all of the other operating systems as well. So, of course, on the main screen, you've got your trash box, you've got the recycle bin, we call it. You can go into your networking functions here in the File Explorer. There is a File Explorer Quick Start tab on the taskbar on the main screen. And it, it's pretty much laid out there. The different versions of Windows present the information a bit differently, but this is a pretty standard look. You've got your navigation sub, items over on the left-hand side, and then whatever you click here, then updates the information on the right-hand side of the screen. And again, it's folders, subfolders, files, application programs, things like that. The latest version of this has been upgraded significantly. They have all of these quick start icon area here on the File Explorer menu, and as well as your standardized Windows menu items up top. So, pretty consistent across the board. Again, just a different arrangement and presentation of the information based upon the version of Windows that you're running. I can go into, there's several different options and categories that I can set up in my File Explorer. For instance, if I want to define functions for a specific folder, if I do a right click on that folder and there's a little menu pops up, I click the properties and it brings up these properties options panels here, which I can do further detailed configuration. For instance, if I'm going, let me go back here. If I am listing file names in the item over here on the right-hand side, well, I can choose in those options that I set up. Do I want to just show a listing of the files? Do I want to show the file and its extension and all of the detailed information? Do I wish to display the file type icon next to it? I can decide those things with the options panels, these guys here. And, the default on, for instance, double clicking a file to bring up its program is to double click, but I can set it where it will just only take a single click here if I wish. That item right here. Okay, single click to launch the item rather than double. So you have quite a bit of leeway and configuration that you can make in the items there and adjust it to whatever your particular preferences happen to be. Look here. You guys excuse me just a second. Come here, sweetie. Come give Papa a hug. Look at this pretty little girl here. I love you.
I love you too.
All right, scram out of here. Papa's working. See you later. Shut the door. Thank you. Mwah. Oh yeah, gotta have me some sugars from that. That's my youngest granddaughter, and every time she comes to see me, she has to jump in here and give Papa a kiss. So I'm not gonna apologize for that interruption there, by the way. But you do have quite a bit of leeway and functionality as far as configuring this stuff the way that you need it to be. And it's just a matter of going in, right clicking on this item, right clicking on that item, and getting in to the properties item boxes over here. And I can even go in here and assign things like access and permissions to individual items for individual users, group profiles, or the universe as a whole. Okay. So I have that full functionality there as far as setting up access and permissions and customizing, as it were, the interface for me. And if I've got multiple users that I define on the system, I can customize the interface, the themes, the settings, the size of the text, the background colors, the slideshow, everything I can customize to suit the individual user. No doubt about it. Okay. Now, this is where this is what I told you guys earlier about going through and exploring the virtual lab environment. Okay. That's what we took a look at first thing this morning. That's what that is there. Now, managing Windows settings is something that you are more than likely going to be charged with from an A+ perspective. More than likely, you're going to be in charge of configuring systems, rolling out systems, and supporting users when they're using these systems. Okay. We're going to assign both of these labs here, primarily this guy here, as part of your homework tonight. And I usually assign both of the labs as homework. Pretty much what you will pick up with this very first lab, managing user settings in Windows, will also satisfy some of the things that you will encounter with doing support on those as well. but I'm more than likely going to go ahead and assign both of those labs as part of your homework. Those are a couple that even though they may not answer specific questions you get on your exam, they sort of act as adjuncts for the lecture we're doing in this particular lesson here. So more than likely you're going to get those as homework assignments. There are certain system settings in Windows that, again, as a systems administrator, and as far as being able to configure systems that I have out in the field in my enterprise network and supporting the users out there, I need to learn about these different things. The sound settings, the audio settings, the video settings, the settings as far as, like I was talking about, how long is it before the system goes into sleep mode due to inactivity, those kind of things. There's also certain settings here that Windows, I'm telling you, manages much better than we human critters can. And virtual memory is one of those. Virtual memory is a concept that some people have a hard time understanding it, but it's really simple. There is space reserved on your primary hard disk drive that is referred to as your virtual memory space. And what it's used for is to provide a holding place, if you will, for pages of main memory if indeed your main memory begins to fill up. Now, in past years and days on the computer systems, when the memory was, typically gauged in kilobytes and megabytes, a relatively limited main memory. Well, the virtual memory area there was used a lot. It's called a swap file or a paging file. So if main memory starts to fill up, the system would automatically go and grab a page or a couple of pages, and it's usually 1024 bytes long of main memory, and temporarily store it in this virtual memory spot physically on a disk. And then it will use that memory for whatever processing is going on in main memory. When it needs those pages, it will go back to virtual memory, grab it, and put it back in main memory, process it, and keep on trucking. Nowadays, because of the massive size configuration on these systems, massive amounts of random access memory, you'll be hard pressed in many cases to fill up main memory. So it doesn't thrash that paging file or that swap file nearly as much as it used to with older operating system configurations. Okay. And even though we can, as individual users, allocate virtual memory space, I'm telling you, the Windows operating system manages it much more effectively and efficiently than we can. And it's more of an automated kind of thing. Now, you need to be aware of it, of course, but it's not something that we truly interact with much anymore because of just the massive configuration and the big fat systems that we find that come straight out of the box. But that is one of the system settings that I would do a little bit further research on if I were you. But I'm telling you, in the real world, you're not going to interact with it directly very much. Battery power and that sleep configuration, things like that, that's something that you may very well need to do. Okay. Now, if you get to a point where you are required to upgrade or update an existing operating system environment, one of the major things you need to do is to make certain that, let's say I'm wanting to go from Windows 10 to Windows 11, or even Windows 7 to Windows 11, Windows 8 to Windows 11. In some cases, that upgrade path, you have to go from 7 to 10 to 11, or you can go straight from 7 to 10, but you have to first weed the instructions and figure out what the upgrade path is, and then you have to pay very close attention. You don't want to do a major update or upgrade to a system from a software perspective that overwhelms the hardware configuration. And I'll give you an example there. When Windows first began to move from the old legacy version, that was a Windows XP, was the specific version of the operating system. They first introduced this the completely new approach to the Windows operating system. It's called Windows Vista. And man, they did a marketing campaign that was awesome. It was completely outstanding. And Windows Vista was quite the departure, especially from a look and feel from what the older versions of Windows had been, Windows XP, Windows 97, and those guys. It was a beautiful operating environment. They changed the logo. They changed the color coding. They softened some of the stark colors. They softened the square edges around all the windows to rounded edges, and it's just a visual treat. It truly was. What they did not tell the public, and Microsoft came very close to shooting himself in both feet on that one, was the massive amount of hardware upgrades that were going to be required just to support the upgrade in the operating system. The operating system alone took somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 megabytes of space, just the OS. And some of the versions of it was even more than that. Well, there were people that had older systems that the entire disk drive space that they had on their computer was 60 megabytes. And then they couldn't understand when they upgraded the Windows Vista on the new computer or the old computer without upgrading the hardware, it wasn't running anymore. It was crawling. I mean, they had some real problems with the systems just not being hardware configured to keep up with the new software updates. So you really have to do your homework on that and make certain that the systems that you are upgrading to, the hardware itself, is going to be able to support and is indeed compatible with the new versions of the OS that you want to load on. And that information is freely available online. You just have to do your research and make sure that you understand what the hardware requirements are for even upgrades from Windows 10 to Windows 11 in some cases. So just be cautious there. The device settings, there is a device settings menu, and it's got multiple items there. Going in again, the audio, the video, the mouse, the keyboard, if you're using voice over IP phone systems, any external items, your printers, your network connections, things like that. You can get to all of those from the device menu, system settings menu, or from your control panel. Okay. So there's multiple paths in just about every situation in order to run what they call the applet programs that allow me to configure and set these things up. My network connections, Bluetooth, USB, Wi-Fi access, all of those settings I will find with, again, individual items from the control panel. And then other people prefer to use the system setting screen. Or there is also a device manager applet. From any command line, you can run the device manager applet or select the device manager from your control panel. Okay. So I go in, and all of those applets give me functionality and direct access for manipulating all of the characteristics, the settings for all of these individual system-oriented functions there. And they call it an applet, the system applet. I can go into the display settings. And again, I can get there in several ways. On front screen on the Windows environment, I just do a right click, and there, well, I'll show you. Let me pull up my Windows environment here. Let's see. All right, I'm on that page. Let's see here. Let's look at this guy. Well, I got to do this first. Hold on. All right. Go here on the main screen on the Windows panel. If I just do a right click on that screen, it pops up with my menu here. Okay. I come down to the display settings item here on the menu. Boom. And it will pull up. Of course, it did it on my other screen, but I'll drag it over where you can see it. It pulls up this display settings menu here. Okay. And that's where I can set things like the screen resolution. You'll see I've got it set for multiple displays, and I have these displays extended, meaning that I go from the one on my desktop, just drag the cursor over to this guy here. I can go in and manipulate individual items here. Again, there's the brightness, okay, color profiling. I can scale the screen. I can decide what the resolution is going to be on either of the screens, okay. So, and that's just a right click to get the systems menu to pop up for me. And I have all of these individual items available here that I can manipulate with that screen or that screen that display applet program. Okay. So, and most of your applet programs are pretty much the same kind of thing that I can utilize to configure all of those items as well. So sound settings, the speaker settings, the volume for the microphone, which microphone is selected, things like that. So all of those system control applet programs are available, again, either from the settings menu, these guys over here, okay, or my control panel. And it's either or you can get there from either of those starting locations. Now, the power options is something we create what's referred to as a power plan. I can tell the system how to, what I want it to do when it times out, in essence. Usually I set up a timer no more than about 2 minutes. And if there's no activity on the keyboard or on the mouse within that time frame, then the system will basically go into sleep mode. It doesn't power all the way down. That's called hibernate mode. But I decide to tell it what it's going to do. I can tell it that, if it goes into sleep mode, well, how do I wake it up? Well, I press any key on the keyboard, that kind of thing. Okay. I can tell the system, say if it's a laptop device, how does it act or react when I close the lid on the laptop? Does it power down or does it go into hibernate mode? Hibernate mode is a little bit different beast. I talked about that virtual memory area on the hard disk drive. When I tell the system to go into hibernate mode, what it does is it takes basically a snapshot of the system configuration while it's active and stores that snapshot onto the primary disk drive. And then, for all practical purposes, it powers the computer down. Well, whereas normally, when I power the system back up, it'll go through the entire boot process. The hibernate mode, the system looks into that area on the virtual disk drive and says, is there a hibernate system file resident there? And if so, didn't go through the whole boot process, just grabs that hibernate snapshot and restores it back to that state. Okay. So I decide how the system is going to be configured to act or react by creating the basic power plans. And that's just another system applet that I get to from, once again, either the system settings screen or from the control panel, either one. Okay. There are certain things that I can do as far as loading application programs and configuring my Windows operating system and the application programs that run under that. I decide to load them. I decide what all the characteristics are going to be. I can decide if there are programs that I want automatically started up to run in the background, for instance. Do I want to have the icons loaded on my desktop in order to do a quick launch on those, or do I want it to be in my taskbar? I make all of those decisions. And each individual application program that I load onto the system, then I can do further configuration specifically for that app. So it tells that app itself how I want it to act and react when I start it up from the disk drive. There is an apps and applications and features applet that I can run, and that's where I can upgrade applications. It's like this guy over here. I can delete existing apps. I can reload device drivers for certain applications if I wish. And I'll tell you, as of late, and when I say as of late, I'm talking within the last 12, 15 years or so, most of the application vendors are providing a function for each individual application that will allow me to attempt to do a repair. Now, you got to understand, these applications is just this whole bundle of files that live on the system. And when I decide to load up one of these apps, it goes to the disk drives, pulls those support files in, and opens those up in main memory. Well, files can become damaged on a system for a number of reasons. Somebody kicks the plug out of the wall, I have a lightning strike or a power surge or something like that. In many cases, some of those files may become damaged or convoluted for some reason. And most of the application vendors, I can go into this apps and features panel. And when I click on the app up here as one of the items, it will give me a repair option. And what that repair option does is it looks at what all of the files that should be associated with that app, checks the status and the state of those files. And if it is one of the repairable apps, they may have even included during the install process a holding area that has all of their raw files there. So that if there's anyone damaged, it can restore those. And that's what those repair functions do. And not all software vendors do it now, but the majority of them that are licensed to run under Windows now are doing that. So I can go in and do some specific application configuration if I wish. On the apps page there, I decide are there certain of those apps that I want to be run automatically when the system starts up. Okay. And my network settings, that's where I go into that applet and configure all of my network connections, my intranet, my internet, my individual network connections, for instance, my Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi Direct I was talking about earlier. That's where I go in and configure my internet settings, my internet connect information. That's where I go in and configure my Bluetooth, okay, my Bluetooth environment, setting up, for instance, a connection between my mobile phone and my computer so I can synchronize my data. We talked about that earlier as well. Also in the networking, that's where I go in and configure some of my security apparatus, my virtual private network client or my Windows firewall. Okay. Now, Windows lately, and this is within the past about 8 years now, they used to have two separate security applications. It used to be the Windows Firewall and the Windows Defender product, which also included antivirus software there as well. They've sort of merged all of those security-oriented products now into the Windows Defender. So it's a complete package of security apparatus now rather than being separated into multiple systems there. I go into the network as well and decide things such as functions or folders or directories that I want to share across the network with other users, or printer sharing. Say if I've got a locally attached printer, I can decide to share that with other users inside my network. Okay. Here are some of the major administrative kinds of tool suites that we have available here. You've got your task manager, task scheduler kind of program. You've got your device manager, you've got the computer manager, you've got a disk cleaner utility, a compression utility for the disk defragmenter, they call it. And I'll tell you, all of these appliances too have a program that you can run. And either you can go through the administrative control panel over here, or if you can only get to a command line interface, well, you can run these individual commands here, and you don't have to put the command, the file type at the end of it, to bring up the computer manager or the device manager or the network manager, or the services manager, and so on. The event viewer, those guys. And I have, and I'm pretty sure it is available. On my personal website. Let me check that right quick. I gave you guys the link to this the other day. I think I have this master command document available for download here in the student links area. I gave you guys the link and the password to that earlier. So let's take a peek here in the A+ area. Pretty sure it's called all commands. Where is it? If I don't have it here, which I think I do, there it is. All command line reference text file right there. You guys go and there it is. I mean, all command lines. It's got Microsoft links there that show you what all the Windows commands are. That's one of the items. And the other one is the Windows management interface, and I do not see that. Nope, I thought I had it available for download here. There it is. That's the one I'm looking for right there. The Windows MMC list. That's an Excel spreadsheet, by the way. And it lists all of the available. Well, okay. Yep, I'll save that. Sure, just bring it on to the downloads page, and I'll display it for you right here. There we go. It is an Excel spreadsheet that lists all of the Windows commands that are available, that runs all of these Windows applet programs that I talked about. Let me pull this up here for you, and you'll see. I'll put this in that that wormhole link and share that wormhole link with you guys again. But there's all of the management console commands that you can run from any command line interface to pull up, like your computer manager or device manager or program manager or event file viewer, all of those. Okay. So while you guys are doing your next lesson quiz, I'll put that file and make it available for download on the wormhole link that I gave you guys earlier there. Okay. So, and that again, it's the commands that are associated with all of these applets. Now, the reason I give with the commands is you're going to find yourself as an A+ technician out in the field somewhere and needing to run, for instance, the computer manager, the device manager. But for some reason, the system you're working on, it's got a boot problem. It won't boot all the way up into your graphic user interface. So in most cases, you can interrupt that boot process, and I showed it to you the other day, to get into the console management menu underneath the covers. One of the things that you have access there is a command line. So if you know these commands, well, then you can run those system applets without having the graphic user interface available to you. Okay. So now that you're not going to get a lot of questions about these on your exam, but my secondary function here is to make you guys better employees and to give you more tools in your tool bag to be better prepared to perform functions you're going to find yourself in these strange situations out in the field. So I will make that file available for download and give you guys the wormhole link on that here in just a little while. Now, in addition to your main start menu, when you click on the left click on the Windows Start menu, you can do a right click on that menu and it gives you what they call it a power menu, power user menu. If you do the right click on the Start menu, it brings up this item here. And notice it's your administrative kind of functions. There's direct link to your apps and features. There's the event viewer. There's system menu, device manager, computer manager, task manager. There's your settings menu. There's direct link to the file explorer, you see. So, and this guy down here, this run item, that brings up a command line interface where you can run commands directly from there. Okay. So it's a shortcut kind of menu to all of these major administrative management functions. And you get there with a right mouse click on your start menu rather than the left mouse click. Okay. And then there you can do these other things here as well. You can do the start it up, your keyboards that have the start button. Not many of them do, I'll tell you. But right click right there on the start menu, and boom, this administrative level menu is displayed for you. Okay. So that's another couple of ways to get to those same types of settings there. So that's a whole bundle of the Windows system settings that you have available there. Looked at the administrative tools, the configuration tools, the power options, the setup of the user profiles, and all of those things are available in every Windows environment that you have. And it doesn't really matter what version of the operating system. Now, currently, we are at Windows 11 is the latest version. Windows 7, which in my opinion was one of the most secure Windows and easy to use Windows distros ever, They finally pulled the plug on that one, actually a year ago now. And boy, I wept bitter tears because that Windows 7 Professional was to this date is one of my all-time favorite version of their OS. Okay. All right, here we go. Time for some more quizzes. Now, once again, you folks that are joining us as far on YouTube, you won't be able to participate in this. So I thank you for your time and attention. I hope you guys have gotten a good taste of what these classes are all about. And I hope to see you in a training session in the not too distant future. I'm about to shut off the live stream on YouTube now. So thank you all very much for joining us. And if you have any information that you need, contact one of our salespeople with CED Solutions, and they can answer all your questions and get you signed up